Hello. I would like to talk about something that has been clearly at the back of my mind when I think about the political situation in my country and a particular model of a political startup that is called Bersama. And it reflected to what I'm doing as well because I had been briefed by my late brother, who did Green Steps Malaysia, on the importance of business together with governance and grassroots. This is called the triangle that could solve a lot of problems when you apply it to the different issues or areas that we are concerned with in society. For example, on accessibility and universal design. And that's what I'm trying to do by offering services to help uh, those in governance or those other businesses, even grassroots, to understand about accessibility and universal design. The reasons behind why we have the standards as it is recommended. Now, why we have to do this because we're in a situation where the governance is not clear. There is no rights to persons with disabilities in form of anti-discrimination legislation. We have a toothless act that was enacted in 2008. We have the Malaysian government signed and ratified conventions on rights of persons with disabilities 2009 and 2010, but there is no harmonization between the convention and the Person with Disabilities Act that was enacted. And it's becoming something that is very difficult for us to accept when we rely on other acts, which is to do with the built environment. When it comes to accessibility and universal design, we rely on the Uniform Building Bylaw 34A and the Malaysian standards, but not necessarily it is incorporated in the procurement process or the system within the local authorities, because that act is for private development that goes through the process of planning approval and building plans approval, intended documentation, and a lot, but not specifically intended for those who are governing outside of the private development. So we have this problem of, which I have listed down in the last podcast episode and also in my blog post at Life is a Design Thesis. And it's entitled the real title is Designing for Every Citizen, but it's under the podcast on disability politics and architecture, part 2, The Decade of Nothingness. Because when I did part 1, there was a feedback that everything could be resolved if UBBL 34A is done, but the elephant in the room, the Person with Disabilities Act, is the overarching, shall we say, umbrella act that needs to be sorted out to be anti-discrimination and to to harmonize with the conventions on the rights of persons with disabilities. So this is like a cycle of nothingness, actually, as well. And so this particular podcast is like a filler to explain further about why in Malaysia we have a political party like Bersama, which is based, established, and run like a startup. And that goes back to that triangle: business, governance, and grassroots. So, excuse me for going on and on about this, but we need to know that we need to have people understanding about, people actually know what to do. They know exactly how to do access audits. They know about accessibility standards and why it's important we follow those standards. And then they go on in their function, if they're an engineer in local authority, or they are a return to work job coach in organizations such as the Social Security Organization, a local government officer, like I said, or a welfare department officer. They need to understand that these things are very important to be done correctly, because you don't get disabled persons joining the program. You don't get disabled persons being part of a program and the mainstream development that the government is suggesting. You don't get disabled persons in schools and in hospitals and coming to clinics, coming to agencies, and being easy to do things. Actually, there have been a bit of a good thing, but you don't get it in the, a bit of a good thing, meaning I did my passport and it was very quick because there's a council for disabled persons. But, to get to the immigration department, to get to these agencies, it's not easy. Sometimes I have to fight for the accessible car park, and it's been misused or something, or the hospital car parks have been misused, and accessibility on the roads, the crossings, the bridges, they are not making me go to and participate in mainstream development even to help myself. And it's not only for disabled persons, it's also for elderly persons, people who is transitioning from after retirement, and they're getting to be much more older and weaker, and they need to have the ease of travel, the independence to still having a sound mental faculties and able to be part of society, even to go up on and board the buses and to go around. And, there is a big, huge gap in which there is still a lot of things left to be desired. So I start thinking about Bersama as a political party. It's the voice of the people. So it's very rights-based. And people who are disabled can join the party and voice their concerns and use the party vehicle to push the agenda and to make things happen, to have changes happen in society, to change the culture of apathy and lack of empathetic designers and lack of, shall we say, implementation, impetus, enforcement, and lack of understanding for 36% of the population, including elderly persons, disabled persons, mothers, nursing mothers, and pregnant mothers, and families with young children. The ease of travel and the ease of using the external environment, is crucial to the development of the nation and to get people to have a better life. And it is a testimony to a country that helps everybody else and not leaving anyone behind. So we are trying to make things more systematic, or we're trying to deal with the systemic problems of accessibility or non-accessibility, and recognizing the barriers. And the barrier starts with having an attitude that everything is fine, or brushing over the cracks, or not dealing with the problems. So therefore, we have this startup, Bersama. And then we've had our startup. It was called Nazmi Universal Design in 2015. And it was while I was an academic in the University of Malaya. And now, as a self-employed person, I did Xyron Engineering Services, Accessibility Solutions, which is Isanduri and Berhad. Oh, is I think a limited company. So we run these services of providing training and understanding so that people could actually understand exactly what the problem is. And when you start thinking about ESG, environmental, social, sustainability goals, and what is sustainability is also to do with inclusion, and not only just green infrastructure or buildings or practices. It's also to do with social inclusion, and that includes that 36% of the population that I mentioned earlier. So how does business, such as Xyron stroke Zazve here that I've started, how does this business assist governance and assist with the grassroots or the people? Now, I did a Google search, and the model comes together when business, how to make and sell things, which is the services that we sell, yeah, not necessarily products, but services. And then we can teach people in governance and other businesses. So governance is the rules and leaders in charge. We can teach the leaders, or we can teach to make it better. But in a moment, it's broken. The Persons with Disabilities Act is broken. And there is like, how long will we get to that point where the governance is much more, shall we say, top down and able, and much more holistic and much more anti-discrimination, right? The rules. When will we get to that point? So meanwhile, we're creating this business and we sell it. And then so that the grassroots people could, everyday local people could be united and approve of it. So what is happening in Bersama as a political party is also happening with me and the company that I help to run. So this idea of the triangle, yeah, it helps companies grow, follow the rules, and keep local neighborhoods happy. So how do they come together? The grassroots, the local voice, disabled person. There are local people pointing out problems such as lack of accessibility and lack of employment, education, things you cannot use. It's not usable, the streets and so on, or the transportation. And then you have business or the engine, which is we are specifically focusing on training people and getting them knowledgeable and skillful in access audit and to do with accessibility standards and universal design. And we train architects and construction professionals. So that is the business that we're doing. Apart from that, we also train customer service and human resource and job coaches so that they could build a solution themselves, like creating a very accessible environment in their office, and eventually make a profit. It just say if they were a cafe or restaurant or a shopping mall or a banking services, they would make their venues much more better and make a profit. A lot of these private companies or businesses, they also come from the government or they do work for the government. So there's kind of like places where we are feeling very unsatisfied because what is the government doing? So we're still waiting for the Person with Disabilities Act to be realized in a way that it is anti-discriminatory. So then, the governance, which is actually is the referee, and the referee cannot be biased, So the local government or board of directors of the governance makes rules to ensure business treat people fairly and safely. So also to do with justice for disabled persons to use services and to do the things they need to do much better, and that includes web accessibility. So this is like a stopgap measure. When will Malaysia get to be totally anti-discrimination for disabled persons, and that we're more satisfied of what's happening? That's why we have this business of training people to understand the standards and the shall we say, the universal design, and actually able to do access audit themselves. This is why we are here as trainers and facilitators to do workshops and get people to be, we have certification as well. So at the end of the day, everyone wins. The local people or disabled people get what they need. The business also makes money, and we can sustain ourselves. And the government keeps peace. So there will be trust. The locals, disabled persons will trust the plan because they also help build it. And disabled persons need to be on board with this as well, to actually get it right and not just, you have to think for everyone else. They cannot only think for their selected group or their own self. They may be a rich person, or they not a rich person per se, but they could be someone who can afford private transportation and a better wheelchair than other people. So we need to get them to think of others as well. So the rules is that the governance would also assist, would be better for it, and there won't be unfair play, unjustified actions or the wrong way of implementing thing happen again. So we need to be sorting this as soon as we can. Thank you for listening to this interlude of the issues at hand, and I hope you could understand what I am trying to do as a business, governance, and the grassroots. The three important factors in getting things done